Good morning and good evening, students, and hello, Professor. Today I want to talk about the Electoral College. This is the system in which our government chooses its president, and I'm sure many of you have been keeping up with the news, especially with the current, or the last election, I should say, with President Trump and Joe Biden battling it out, Joe Biden winning. But that's a whole controversy that I don't want to get into right now. But I actually want to start off with a quote from Article 2 of the Constitution, which states, "Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislator thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress." What does that mean? Okay. What does that mean? It basically just means that this is basically the foundation in which the Electoral College comes from. Now, some early history. The legislator back in the 1800s, this is a little bit after the American Revolution, the legislator would appoint electors and people would vote for two candidates. Candidates with the majority of electoral votes would become president, and the second most would become vice president. In our current democracy, it's the president and vice president of both political parties. But back then, it would be four different people running for president, vice president, president, vice president. And if there was no winner, the House of Representatives would decide with one vote per state. And at the time, there weren't many states, only about 16 states. But early problems arose. Instead of the Democratic and Republican parties that we know today, the parties were instead the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans. At the time, during the election of 1776, the Federalist nominees were Adams and Pinckney, and the Democratic Republicans nominees were Jefferson and Burr. The popular election in 6 of the 16 states, Adams won by 71 votes, but Jefferson won with 68. Divisions among the Federalists led to Adams' victory, but McKinley receiving less votes than Jefferson. So what ended up happening was that President Adams would now become president. But Jefferson from the other party, the Democratic Republican Party, would win. So there was two different political parties in the Oval Office, which created a lot of problems. The tie vote in the Electoral College was for Jefferson and Burr. The House at the time was controlled by the Federalists, and Jefferson was unable to receive the majority. Hamilton was able to sway support to elect Jefferson. And ever since, the 12th Amendment required separate votes for president and vice president, what we now see today. Also, Burr killed Hamilton in a duel in 1804. Because he wasn't very happy at the fact that Hamilton was playing the back rooms. How were electors chosen? I'm glad you asked. The number of electors is directly proportional to the number of representation in Congress. This is me. Well, it just means that the number of electors equals the number of senators and representatives in Congress. And it depends in each state. So electors is directly proportional to the number of representation in Congress. What does this mean, right? It's just in layman's terms, it just means that the number of electors is based on how many senators and representatives there are in each state. So, for example, Connecticut, our lovely home state, has 5 representatives and 2 senators. So that would mean that Connecticut has 7 electoral votes. Now, Texas has 36 representatives and 2 senators. How many electoral votes would they have? I would then engage the class, asking them to raise their hands and seeking volunteers. And I would go down the list as to how many electors there would be. So California, 53 representatives, 2 senators. Students, how many electoral votes are there in California? Did I hear 55? Yes, 55, that's correct. In Ohio, has 16 representatives and 2 senators. How many electoral votes are there? Yes, there is 18. That's correct. How can a nominee win? Well, let me tell you. There are 538 potential electors in total, and that's 100 from the Senate, 435 from the House of Representatives, and then 3 from Washington, D.C. And now, because Washington, D.C., that's a special case because they have 3 electors, but there are no senators, and the district only has a non-voting delegate in the House of Representatives. The first nominee to win an absolute majority wins the presidency, which in this case the majority out of 538 would be 270 electoral votes. Now, some special cases. If no candidate has a majority vote, then the process is moved to the House of Representatives. The House votes on 3 presidential candidates with the most electoral votes. The unit rule is something that 48 out of the 50 states all follow. And the basic mentality of it is winner take all. So I want to explain to you with an example. If in Connecticut, 49% of the population voted Democrat and 51% of the population voted Republican, that would mean that all the electoral votes, all 7 of the electoral votes would be handed over to the Republican nominee. 51% out of 49%. Even though it's very close, all the electoral votes would still be handed over to the Republican Party. I would then ask the class the question, if Biden won 55% of the votes in Colorado, while Trump won 41%, Colorado has 9 electoral votes. Who won the electoral votes here? I would ask for volunteers and see if anyone wanted to answer that. But the answer would be Biden because he won the plurality there. This is a map of the last election. As you can see, the big name electoral places like California, they typically always lean towards Democrat. Texas as well. The swing states, Florida, Wisconsin, Illinois, those are the battleground states where you'll see a lot of the campaigning. But you can see all the numbers for everyone. So then I would engage the class and ask, hey, student, how many representatives are there in Florida? Now, I'm afraid that's not right. There's 27 representatives in Florida because each state has 2 senators. So all they have to do is just subtract 2 from the electoral votes. So we have Wyoming. How many senators are there in Wyoming? See, that was a trick question, students. There is 2. I'm trying to see if you're paying attention. And I'm glad you are. I would engage the students more in scenario-like questions. Like, for example, students, imagine if we were all Trump supporters. Let's just say this for now. Imagine if we're all Trump supporters and we have the power to change the map here, and we're trying to get the Reds to win right now. Well, how many states would have to turn red in order for Trump to win here? Anyone? Well, for example, if we get Illinois to be red, that would be 20 more for Trump, 20 less for Biden. Trump would be at 252. And if we get Minnesota and Wisconsin, it's another 20, 252. That would be 274. That would give Trump the the Republican victory. Yes, I would engage in more scenario-like questions like that. I also want to show you students something. This is the map from the last election with Clinton and Donald Trump. And I just want to compare the 2 maps here for a second. You can kind of see that some of these states don't change colors that much. Like, California, Texas, they're hard line blue and red. But like over here, you get Arizona changing to blue. You got Wisconsin over here, red last time, now blue this time. Yeah, but you can kind of see the pattern down here. Georgia, it was red last time, turned blue this time. And Hawaii and Alaska, I mean, they also kind of stay the same as well. I want to talk to you guys about gerrymandering as well, because it is kind of a unfair democratic process, and it's something that I feel is not talked about often. The process of dividing up and redrawing districts to give your political party an advantage. What does this mean? Well, let's imagine ourselves that we live in this beautiful community of 50 precincts, right? Normally, perfect world, 60% blue, 40% red. This is how they would vote. But now, imagine we're a blue member, right? We want the blues to win. And we have the power to change the districts. Well, how do we get the blues to win? Well, we need to make 5 districts. Okay, easy. We get 5 districts, we line them up horizontal, creating more blues in every district, creating 5 electoral seats. If we're a strong red member, we can manipulate the districts to make sure that the reds win. See, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 reds here, 4 reds here. But over here, there's only 4 reds here and 6 blues here. But the number never changes. It's only the district lines that change. And what you get from gerrymandering is these convoluted and bizarre district lines in order to favor one party or the other. All right, students, activity. You'll all be divided into several groups, and your group will be assigned either red or blue. You and your group must come up with scenarios where your party nominee can win. Come up with at least 5 different scenarios. This is something that I would have the students do, divide into groups. So, like, for example, Trump starts with 204 electoral votes, and Biden starts with 223. Biden wins Pennsylvania with 20 and North Carolina with 15, earning him 239. Michigan and Arizona hold their respective elections, with Michigan giving 16 for Biden, giving him up to 239 as well. Arizona, which has 11 electoral votes, goes for Trump, bringing up his total to 250. I would also surprise some of the students. Students, how many representatives are there in Pennsylvania? And they would see that Pennsylvania has 20 electoral votes, and so they would do the math in their head. Oh, electoral votes, 2 senators, so minus 2, 18 representatives in Pennsylvania. But yes, I'll continue on. Finally, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Florida vote. Biden barely wins Florida with 29 votes, but Trump secures Minnesota with 10 votes, and Wisconsin with 10 votes, giving Trump the 270 Electoral College votes necessary to win. I would have the students create a couple more scenarios where make a scenario where Biden wins by 30 points more than Trump, or a scenario where both Biden and Trump are tied, a scenario where Trump loses by 20 points, so on and so forth. Now, class, I want to ask you for your opinions. Do we like the Electoral College? Do we think this is fair? How do we feel about the winner-take-all method? Do you think it's fair that if you live in Connecticut, for example, and you're a Republican, typically Connecticut votes Democrat, but if you're a Republican, you vote Republican, does your vote kind of doesn't matter that much too much, because either way, all the electoral votes are just gonna go towards the Democrat vote. I would engage the class, get their reads on the opinions of the winner-take-all method, the Electoral College in general, and then I want to see if the class has any different suggestions on what we could do without the Electoral College, another method that we could use without the Electoral College. I would have a short pros cons list, but I would also want to engage the class and see if they could come up with some more. So, class, for example, the pros of the Electoral College. The good things, what we have from it, well, it keeps the small states relevant. It ensures all parts of the country are involved, and it favors our current 2-party system. Personally, I would argue that the 2-party system, that could be a con as well, to be honest. But I put that in the pros there just because. But what you also get from the Electoral College, the cons, it gives too much power to swing states. You have Trump and Biden battling, campaigning in these swing states, and not really going to more populated states or even smaller states. The popular vote is not really needed to win in the Electoral College, because we have, for example, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump back in 2016, where Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, and Donald Trump won the Electoral College, and that's how he became a president. And the cons, well, the Electoral College is kind of outdated. Our founding fathers back in the 1800s when they first created this system, they created the system because they didn't trust the general public, and they didn't trust the common voter to have the knowledge of who to vote for. And I guess to be fair, they weren't entirely wrong, because literacy wasn't that prominent, and knowledge wasn't as profound and easily accessible as it is now. So it begs the question: is it outdated? Like, do we need to have a new system of government? Do we have a new system of figuring out who our leader should be? That's essentially what the presidency is. After we created our pros and cons list, I would ask all the students to debate and see I would separate the students between the pros and the cons, have them gather up in groups and see have them gather up in groups and spend some time with each other, bouncing off ideas off each other, and hopefully figuring out which side it is. After about like a couple minutes, maybe like 10 minutes of that, they would reconvene and they would debate with each other. But there's no class here, so I can't do that. But after the debate, I would ask the class if they had any more questions. Any more questions, class? So everyone understands? Okay. Well, class dismissed. I want to thank you all. Thank you, Professor. And have a good day.